We're live.
Now we
not on
are.
your-
You gotta
not on
fucking
your-
silence me. Whatever.
Not on your
Just
sweatshirts.
fucking Paige, cut
There's-
it off.
There's nothing in this world that will silence you, Paige. That's for sure.
Everything silences me. I am but a minority without a voice.
Oh my gosh, you have the loudest voice of all of us.
That's what I'm saying.
That's just because I'm in a basement with the mic turned up. I'm actually like really quiet. That's why like when I start to back
Basement
away
with
from
a
here.
mic turned up. Josh is in some shed.
It's true. But she
Oh, you
said.
should have seen him when he hopped on. He was just taking a fat hit. His little stubby finger was waving at the camera, and just yeah.
They're not that stubby, Josh. I mean, come on.
They are when they get really close.
Well, yeah, anyone's finger if you get close.
Whoa!
Not
Look
mine.
at that little summer sausage.
I mean, I can palm a basketball.
Oh, showing off now. I can palm a disc.
I mean, I'm 6'5". I'm not gonna have midget fingers.
Can you imagine?
Palm
Yeah.
a disc.
Little nubbins.
Yeah.
Oh, grabbed your
That's a
mini.
pretty big hand you got there.
Grabbed his mini. Makes his head look bigger.
George Costanza. Ha ha. What am I supposed to? Aren't they all diameter? I'm not grabbing a condor. Like, oh.
Well, maybe that'd be impressive. Instead of grabbing your 6-inch mini. All right. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Jammers in the Rough on Tuesday nights, presented by CH Sports. As always, we got the absolute worst Cody Waldron. We have Mr. North Face, Josh Winter.
Oh!
Yeah. And of course,
Did you buy
the
that at
reason you're
Goodwill?
here, the man, the myth, the legend, the potato of Jammers in the Rough. What up? Holler at your boy. 541 represent.
You're not 5'4".
Nobody other than you two yokels know what 541 represent. Nobody knows.
He's also
Nobody-
not 5'1".
Jerry Ann's in Canada. They probably don't use zip
I'm from Warm
codes. They
Springs,
just use,
Oregon.
like,
We're 541.
oh, Jerry Ann probably uses like
I just live
maple
in Portland.
syrup. We're from the Maple District, eh?
So,
Yeah.
well, we'll just hop into it. First question today: rare air discs. What does that mean today?
No, not rare air disc. A rare disc.
Rare discs. What does that mean anymore? I don't know. I'm reading Josh's handwriting.
You don't
It's
guys
not
throw me
me.
under the bus.
It's not
It's not even handwriting. It's typing.
It's typing. It's a computer
He
interface
sent me a
that all
letter.
of us use.
the
Josh
concept
sent
of
me.
it.
I have Josh's handwritten notes right here.
Yeah.
That is a lie.
I mail them on Wednesday, so they're to him by Tuesday
Exactly.
next week.
For the day after tomorrow, you'll be working on the notes to send to him. Okay.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready
That's
for
how
it.
we have it all set up.
That's what you see Josh over there scribbling right now.
But I think coming towards the tail end of the year, I think it's always good to look back and see how much the market truly has crashed on rare
Oof.
discs. I mean, I'm seeing
Mm.
like Roaming Thunder 2's bids are stalling out at $35, and I didn't think I would ever see them under 60 again. So
What?
one,
$35?
that's where it stalled
Yeah.
out. I mean, I don't think they're
People
going
aren't
to sell.
selling for that much.
People aren't selling them for that much, but people aren't paying very much for them either, or wanting to. And so the whole market's kind of crashed, which is fine. If you can find people willing to sell, now is obviously time. I'm seeing in search of posts that are only being answered by scammers. They're not being answered by, you used to be able to do like, hey, looking for a second run FD. You'd have like your options of usually super beat in, like super like 6 out of 10 discs that somebody's trying to sell for $100. You'd have your primo collectors that are like, hey, if you want this, make me an offer that makes me want to sell it. And then you'd have, a few rare finds in there that you can get lucky with. But now in search of posts aren't going answered. People are holding on to discs because they don't want to sell them. And people really aren't wanting to buy them for even like a semi-decent value, right? Like I don't mind taking a hit every once in a while and seeing the hits taken, like a $60 disc, you sell it for $50. You kind of feel bad, but you move on. But
That's doable. But when I see people are like, yeah, I'll pay you $10 for it. It's like $6 to ship. I would rather take my disc outside and chuck it into the woods for $4. I would get $4 enjoyment out of that. That's a pet peeve of mine.
What I don't understand about it,
$9
though,
shipped.
is like, say like a second run FD, like those were going for 200 plus for a brand new max weight one, and they don't really sell for that much anymore. But they just got older. They didn't like rerun them. They're still rare to get. They're still amazing discs, but what has caused the price to like plummet down?
Well, I
I
think
mean,
there's still $100 discs all day. You know, if you get a like, you know, the peak market was like $200 for, you know, a second run FD.
Mhm.
I still think there, since I came onto this market before the market blew up, second run FDs were always $100 discs, and I think that's a magic sticking point for that disc. But you have people in Cody's inboxes being like, "Hey, Cody, this disc is worth $35. This is second run FD." You know,
Paige is calling
that's
people out. I like
bullshit.
it.
That's some, you know.
Yeah.
I agree. The market's flooded, but I don't know if technology has advanced so far that, you know, it's pushing some of these things away, or just people aren't really knowing what truly makes some of these runs special. Like, what was it? The FD1 came out, and they're like, oh no, the Vanguard. The Vanguard came out, the
Mhm.
swirly one, and they're like, I don't care who you are, this is a second run FD. Which anybody who knows anything knows it's not a second run FD.
Aren't they different
Um,
speeds? So a
they're
different weight.
different speeds, 9 and a 7 speed.
One's a
Um,
Thunderbird. That's it. One's a Thunderbird. One's
One's a
a
Thunderbird and one's a
FD.
FD. Do they use similar
Yeah.
things? Absolutely. Are they going to hold similar lines? Yeah. But throw it into 100 trees and tell me that it's a second run FD, because the second run FD still going to be flying exactly like how it flew out of the box. The Vanguard is going to be a flippy SOB. Um, but also, I think the market's saturated at this point in regards to just manufacturers dumping. Like, we just had Black Friday. How many new plastic is this hitting the market just this last week that
Oh, it
everyone's
was
going to
dead
be
before
expecting to
that,
buy?
though.
Oh, it was definitely Debbie. I mean, that's what I mean, though. Like, as consumers, the manufacturers are, you know, encouraging us to buy all of their new plastic, like the new time lapses. They had to do a special chase stamp and also the new stock run, and then the variability in colors. And Simon had to come out and be like, "Oh, this was a process. I had no idea about how discs cooled and how to make them like stable or not." And, you know, I had to give the whole chase thing of like, purples are flippy. You probably want this. Which time lapses were complete garbage, but I dropped $40 on them because I wanted to try them, and they were trash discs.
No. I wouldn't say they're trash disc, but that is such an over saturated slot. 12.5 minus 1.3. Think about how many discs are made to fill that. And especially when you have like the number two selling disc of all time is like the Destroyer, which is that slot. Like, it's
Yeah.
going to be tough to beat it. I know people are like, oh, it's a gyro. It's going to, but there's so many different runs of Destroyers. I'm sure there's so much overlap.
No,
If
and I mean, I think it correlates too with the market crashing, right? Because like,
Yeah.
why do I need to go chase you know, 4-time Paul Macbeth Destroyer when this new time lapse came out? And so you get the people that would used to chase those things now are just buying new and not knowing better, and not knowing maybe why some of these older discs are just slightly better. Um I think personally, I will say I don't like the time lapse because it has zero glide. I think I had me, who has a good like 450 arm, and I had a buddy who has about a 500 to 550 arm. We're both throwing them at Blue Lake, and we're both getting hyzer flip drift out of them. But when you throw a destroyer or you throw a realm, when they start to come back, that's when they start to push forward, and you're like, okay, this is a distance driver now. The
Mm.
like time lapse where hyzer flipping drifting is just like, okay, cool, I want to be a berg now, and just falls out of the air. So that was my experience with the time lapse, which is super weird. I don't need a weird 12 speed going 9 speed distances. Um, and like I said, this is like between me and my buddy who throws 500 plus feet. We're both kind of getting those same things where they're good shapes out of the hand. You're like, oh, this is going to be a crush. If this was a destroyer, this is 500 feet all day. And he followed it up with a 500-foot destroyer throw. um, I didn't like the time lapse, but it's like, well, they got me my $40, and
Yeah. So you
I
think
gotta
that's what
tell
it
them,
is where you're spending the money that you've allotted to discs to buy new runs and new stamps as they come out instead of using that money to buy an older disc that costs more?
I think so. I mean, especially with, you don't, I mean, how many people have as much money because discs aren't selling, right? Like, I used to be able to do it, and I think Cody was like really great at this, where you would buy your disc that you wanted to try out, they wouldn't make the bag. You can sell them within that week and stack your PayPal. So you pay $50 for a P3X, and then you sell it for 40 the next week. Well, it's a $10 rental fee, but you're still making money, and you're not losing money. Now you buy that P3X for $50. It doesn't make the bag, but you can't sell it for 40. You can't sell it for 30, and you don't want to sell it for less than that because you're taking way too big of a hit. And now you have another one on your shelf. So I think the newer discs where you're buying them for stock prices, that's getting that little bit of slush money to where it's like, okay, I spent $20, $22 on a time lapse. It didn't make the bag, but I'm only out $22 rather than, chasing something that might be, like, oh, the old Heimberg or Cloudbreaker 2 might be that. They just sold for $75 on our page. You know, chase that, it doesn't make the bag. Now you're out $75. So I think that plays a part into it. But yeah, it's just, I mean, the market's completely crazy right now, and it's
I feel like it's been like this it's been holding steady at being very low for a
it's
while
been
now.
but I think it's been on a decline because it's been low, but
A
bigger
steady
collector
decline.
discs haven't hit that hill yet, right? Like
Yeah.
a 4X Buzz is still going to want to be pushing that $100 mark, but now you get in the non-cool 4X Buzzes that aren't even selling for $60. Which is fine. Like it's all going downhill. And that's oversaturation. That is people not wanting to pay to greed. Um, Fear of missing out is huge. I think FOMO is what really chases it. I think Discmania did a good job with the hype train, and they continue to do a good job with the hype train. Um, my curiosity though is as we start to see more money go to our players. We have now $3 or $4 million contracts that are signed, and probably more that are going to come in. If this level of saturation is what's going to keep a manufacturer afloat, how long is this sustainable from a manufacturer's side? Because there's going to be a time if the collector market's showing you, right? The collector market's like, if that's stopping, that's going to then lead way to now like Ledgestone. They live off of, oh, limited edition Ledgestone only run 20 times a year. What
I'll
happens
say
when
they've run that limited in 10 times every drop.
Mm-hmm.
they'll go out of business? So, but I think for like Prodigy, for example, is a good, like, even if the players didn't want to leave Prodigy because Prodigy is a terrible company, um, what happens if they can't afford to pay Isaac Robinson $1 million? Or they do pay him $1 million, but they can't move plastic because Robinson isn't necessarily being able to move that much, Prodigy plastic. Gannon Burr is another example with him potentially transitioning. What happens to these manufacturers that want to give big contracts to these players, but they're not able to meet the demand or actually, convert it to sales?
Yeah, that's going to be the hard part because it's going to take because it puts a different kind of value on a player. Like you can be really good at the game, you can have a great putt, but if you don't have a social following, like you're not going to bring those sales into the manufacturer, so you're going to be less appealing to them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nowadays what it comes down to is who's going to follow you, who's going to root for you just because you're you, and they know you through some posts that you do, or they love the way you talk, or don't like the way Paige talks, or many variables. Like it's skill is just a portion of it nowadays.
No,
You
and
need
I
that
mean,
online clout.
The clout, that's the word, the clout breaker.
The clout breaker. Why that sounds like a Brody disc. The clout breaker.
but I think manufacturers are not only leaning heavily on the consumer, but a lot of manufacturers rely heavily on brick and mortar while also treating brick and mortars like shit. Um, and that's a weird dysfunctional relationship. Like Ledgestone, for example, you can't pick and choose your Ledgestone run that you want to do. Like, oh, let me just do this one or this one. They force you to subscribe to the entire year of Ledgestone for brick and mortars, which is ridiculous. Discraft is more famously known for the "you get what you get" um, modality ever since COVID, and that's stuck, which is terrible because they're dumping all their stuff that doesn't sell on brick and mortar. You have other companies that, like, AGL, for example, um, they'll want a bigger order, they just won't sell you like the one mold or like that. You need to
Hmm.
order multiple. And I'm sure a lot of other manufacturers are like these. These are just the top of my head right now, but they also rely heavily on these brick and mortars because that's that cash up front, right? They're going to spend whatever 100 discs cost to get their shelves full, um, which is what you rely on as a manufacturer because those are those big cash flows. They don't care about my $40. It adds up when there's 1,000 of me that's spending $40. But brick and mortars are going to give them the big, consistent cash grabs. But they're not giving them access to early release to actually pre-order. They're making it difficult for them to continue to have stock on their shelves, and continuing to push out all of these things for them. And like nobody's like the brick and mortars aren't able to push as much plastic as is being pushed out there. And I get curious about when that breaking point's going to hit.
Yeah, I mean, like Discmania was, they were awesome to work with, selling discs until they switched this one part where you couldn't pick the colors you're getting, because like you could pick the colors, the weights, weight range, and they were phenomenal to work with for like a long period of time. But once that switched, it changed everything. Because then we start, would say they were trying to do a big variation of colors, but then you get a box and it's like 90% yellow
Yeah,
or
which nobody wanted
green.
the
It's like
yellow.
you can't push those very fast, and it's like when you're trying to like have a business going, that's really hard.
And
It's
isn't that
really
like a
hard.
terrible and this is the terrible marketing and sales side of manufacturers where you can tell they're not like very good professionals and businessmen because also like you should be able to evaluate and be like, hey, yellow doesn't sell. So instead of continuing to push yellow, why don't we just discontinue yellow and go purely focus on our blues and pinks for the evolution line for Discmania? That is weighing all of this sales aspect out, and they're not even doing that basic level of adjustment. They're just continuing to do it because brick and mortars are going to continue to bail them out because they don't have a choice and you take the option away from them. Because what are they going to do, not sell discs? They're a disc store.
Yeah.
And
There's also people like Jerry, who primarily throws green discs. So there's probably somebody that just throws yellow discs, but that's just
What a
so far and few
monster.
between. At least that I've seen. Out of all the people I've played disc golf with, like
I had a
those
brick
that
and
color
mortar
you don't see.
who didn't sell a Prodigy disc for a year and had to return, like work with Prodigy to return all of their stuff, only for Prodigy to then send them even worse, like worse supply to try to make up for it. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, my point is like, there's going to be I think we're getting towards this like precipice of being like, what's going to happen in regards to some of this because we're going to see some companies implode, um, because they can't maintain a sustain and they overextended. I don't think MVP is there because Simon isn't, but like Discmania, if they sign, you know, a Gannon Burr and Alden Harris, another big name, and they go all in on that, and then all of a sudden, whatever their next move is halts. I mean, they've already sold out to the House of Discs, which means they're on thin ice. So really, like, what are they skating? If Eagle ends up leaving and being a drama, is that going to some of the sale or like just completely crash? Because I know Simon had to have played a huge impact on Discmania losing a lot of money this year.
Well, if you look, as far as the market, I'm looking at it this way where the pinnacle of the market was probably like 2021, where stimulus money, COVID, people, that's when we had the biggest influx of buyers and the lowest amount of plastic. And now it's changed where COVID is still out there, but it's not it's not a shutdown. So people are going back to, like, you see Alex Hart is now doing like jujitsu and stuff like that. He's not playing disc golf solely as his only form of being active. Same thing with me. Like, volleyball came back, disc golf came back. I was working at school. So now manufacturing has finally caught up over the demand, where it used to be like they were like coming out saying like, hey, our workers can't work, so we can't make disc, like hold out for us and stuff like that. But now people, I bet you there's been more of a bigger exodus of players, but you're also getting more like Prodigy. They're probably making so much plastic, nobody's buying it. Same thing with the gyro boxes. Gyro boxes used to sell out right away. Now they made so many, people are like, hey, I still have gyro boxes if anyone wants them. I mean, they're cool and all, and I got one, and it was pretty neat. But at the same time, it's like, well, I can probably go buy a Crave for $10 if I really wanted it.
Well, no, and that's my point, right? Like, because what they're pushing out is what they needed to sustain themselves as a company.
Yeah.
And then if what used to sell out isn't selling out anymore, how many hits do they take until they're not able to sustain like $1 million player and a world champ? Um, and I think MVP is doing it the smartest. I think MVP has been the best because they didn't, and are they with the COVID money didn't invest in players. They did what? They invested in molds. They invested in, you know, establishing what they had, and then they invested in a Simon, um, which is a smart way to do it. Whereas a lot of companies invested in players, and that's not necessarily, paying off in some of that scheme of things too. I'd be curious about Discraft with their Tour Series stuff too, like because they invested a little bit more in players. I know, like seeing what their Tour Series sales were actually looking like, because I don't see too much of those bottom stamp swirl ESP discs in a lot of people's bags.
They're just boring. Like, there's a lot of Discraft players that, I'm fond to watch. I would love to support, and I do support it once in a while. But it's just, one, it's Discraft, and two, the stamps are boring. I like cool stamps.
Yeah,
And it's hard to find like all the Tour Series is like their name and a couple lines around it. It's like there's nothing really cool about that, in my opinion.
Don't be like that.
I just,
Yeah.
I just was.
So
just
then,
was.
I mean, I guess you could transition to what, the market. What is that going to do for these big names that are out there next year? Because think about who's a free agent. If you look at it like other sports, you're going to have Eagle, Gannon. Is
Alden
aren't one of the?
Harris?
I would say Alden Harris is one of the Robinsons a free
No,
agent.
they're still in contract for a year.
Okay, and is of
Who's
consequence.
the FPO that just left their team? There was another European.
Which team?
I can't remember.
That's very helpful.
But I mean, the big ones would be probably Eagle, Gannon, and I mean, those are the two big names because Calvin's still under contract.
Matty O, is he still under contract?
He just signed 4 more years with Westside.
Okay, so then
I mean, Mattio's in
finally
a
got
spot though that he should just stay where he's at. He shouldn't.
Yeah, I agree. Matty O should just push that stroller around for the Westside disc and just live his best life.
Yep.
No one is. I mean, I think these companies are going to have to start offering something other than just, sales, especially now because the new contract is here's your established contract, which was like, the old like $5 per every disc you sell kind of thing, and here's allotments of discs and free discs and swag and things for you to sell. And bonuses obviously are written into that. So that's the established contract. And now they're enticing a lot of these players with what? You make your own mold. Simon got enticed with his own manufacturing lineup. Paul Macbeth obviously kind of kicked that off. Paige Pierce, Eagle with his creator series, Kyle Klein with his creator series. You're seeing that as that kind of fruit that's kind of being dangled as, you can make more money if you design your own molds. But that's a heavy investment in these players. But I think there has to be something too, not only in between that, but also extending past that, right? Like if I'm Eagle and then Discmania is wanting to, like, I want to stay at Discmania, now it's not just a creator series. It has to be something more like creative, and what really can a manufacturer offer more to a player like that than they already have given them. Um, and I don't know what that is. I mean, I think maybe partnering with commentary teams would be great for people's brands. Like, I think Jomez has a really good, look at what Jomez does for Yuli, Big Germ, Sexton. Being able to kind of pay for the commentating slot for your team might be a new like venture worth pursuing. I mean, if not them, Gatekeeper Media, right? Like, look what it's doing for Fish. All of these things,
Let's
like,
say broadcasting money is big in other sports. Like I think the Dodgers signed a couple years ago a $9 billion broadcasting. So that's where the Dodgers get their money. I don't
yeah,
know how that's working in disc golf because I don't think anyone's paying Joe Mez that amount of money. I don't think Joe Mez
I mean, the
is
fact they
kicking
lost
that
money
back.
and they got absorbed by
Yeah.
the PDGA.
Yeah.
So I don't know if broadcast rights and money from that is going to go. Is that going to get funneled to these contracts? You know,
That's what I'm
is
saying.
Simon-
Like,
yeah,
well, I'm
I don't
saying
know
like
where
a
it's going to come
team.
from.
Like, if I'm Discmania, I'm looking at how to like break through this mold. Or it doesn't matter if I'm Discmania or whoever. Then I'm looking at like, hey, PDGA, you're short on money. What if I give you $1 million to reinvest in your company? But I'm going to ask for commentating rights on Jomez. Do you really think PDGA will turn down the $1 million for those rights? I think they would sell those rights away. They get the flush of cash, and now all of a sudden, Discraft is able to be like, here's the Brody, here's the Yuli and Gossage show for Jomez commentating moving forward, because those are something that's able to play with. And as a company, you should be evaluating that. You should be evaluating the impact that those have, because those single-handedly carry, some of these aging, retiring stars out. The same thing with Bearhart and Perkins. They're on the field commentating. Like, okay, cool, $1 million. I get this right. Yuli's touring, but he's kind of fading out. So also, let's slap him there. Like, they should be positioning, and that's something they can start to offer to some of these players as retirement packages, as building your brand. Because like, is this something that they should start to be looking at and wondering what that next step for companies, because they need to make money outside of this disc sales.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting fact. Do you know Paul Ulibarri is like one of the best putters out there? He's top 3 putting. Did you know that? Stat wise, I did not know that. Just because you're talking about like aging people and like they're done. Like Paul Ulibarri was like top.
Well, he had a great second half of the
Yes.
season. I'll give credit where credit's due.
Yes, I heard that just recently on some. I was like, "There's no way." Yep, and he was top 3.
Yeah.
You know who number 1 was?
Who's that?
Ricky?
Cookie Monster. The Cookie Monster, baby. I was kind of shocked. Yeah.
Yeah, which goes to show putting for dough isn't necessarily what it's all cut out to be.
Chicks dig the long drive, baby. Chicks dig the long drive.
Yeah,
now,
drive
money,
for show, drive for win. Because I'd be curious to see like the results of the top 5 putters versus the top 5 throwers in disc golf, and to see who actually is getting more cash.
So I can find it.
Where you at, UDisc? Drop some stats on us. We're sponsored by UDisc. They pay us.
No, we're not. Fuck you, disc. Don't support. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh. Now,
speaking of corporations taking your money, let's talk about UDisc. They're raising their fee once again.
I keep getting email. Are they?
No, I mean, I'm sure they will.
Probably. Because I know, like, I keep getting
yet.
emails from PDGA, like, "Hey, a good Christmas present is renewing your subscription." I'm thinking, what? No, that's a
Also,
terrible Christmas gift.
Let's talk about this, like the renew your subscription, which is like the worst like marketing. So you buy a 1-year membership, January to December, and when they try to sell it to people, you're like, "Hey, you get the rest of the year free." It's like, no, I've already paid for the rest of the fucking year.
Yeah. You're going to give me 3 days for free. Thanks, PDGA, you kind people.
Yeah.
I don't even know who's in charge of that. Who do I yell at? Who do I get mad at?
Dude, they don't even know. They don't even know.
in charge of PDGA too? Nate Heinhold, dude, he's
like the
Illuminati.
The board president or whatever.
Wasn't he the guy from Ledgestone?
Yeah. That's the whole thing. He's not necessarily unbiased when he does these things.
I don't like it. It stinks.
So all of this to say, rare discs. What does this mean anymore?
Dude, I got some Madison Walker Wraiths that I'm like, I'm not even gonna sell these things because people are gonna be like, "I'll give you." No, because you won't give me anything. You're just say, "Hey,
$35."
No, I will throw them into a tree before that. No, I wouldn't. I don't throw new plastic. It scares me. I just had to cycle this in, Paige. You remember this thing?
I do remember that one. I thought it was earlier.
It is that you can't really tell on the camera. I made him send me a video of him putting this at the store. I'm not gonna throw it if it's new. And Paige is sitting there throwing it at things. Like, all right, I'll throw it now. I'll throw it.
I mean, that's one of my first. Like, I remember one of our first deals. I had to go. I was like Alton Baker actually randomly, and I threw the Razor Claw for on the highs or whatever for
Yeah, I
you
would
and
say
sent it to you.
this was somewhat recently, but that Razor Claw was a long time ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, I'm not gonna throw it. All right, I'll go throw it for you. There's
Oh,
something
I'm
else you
sorry.
do.
I guess it's not Alton Baker. It's the Oregon Disc Golf Course at Alton Baker.
That is terrible. Can we talk about terrible names in disc golf? Because that's one of them.
What's another one?
I don't know.
Go ahead, Cody. Go ahead. You're going somewhere with this.
The Los Angeles Angels of California. That's a terrible one too. But that's baseball.
Golden Gate Park.
That's
Let's
a.
see.
You don't like that one?
Yeah,
That
that
name?
one's simple. I mean, I don't know what it
You
is.
just
But
get a
Golden
view
Gate
of
Park.
Golden Gate. It's just at Golden Gate Park. It's not. There's
Mm.
nothing cool. I want something
No, the
better.
other one is just a mouthful. Hey, do you want to meet me up for a quick round at Alden State Park, Baker, whatever you just said? I don't know. It's too much.
Oregon Disc Golf Course at Alton Baker.
No, that's terrible because it's not Oregon's disc golf course. Oregon is a pretty big place. That is not their only disc golf course. I don't like it.
But the company's
like
name Oregon Disc Golf.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What company?
Oregon Disc Golf.
Myron's company.
No, he does not own Oregon. Myron, if you're listening, you got to change that.
He was a guest on here.
You
I'm
heard it
just
first
saying,
here,
I don't-
Myron. Change it.
Yeah, come at me, Myron. Rare air disc aren't worth anymore. That's what Paige is saying.
No,
Our
I mean,
sponsor this week.
sponsor this week, Rare Discs. Use code
Worthless.
10 or Jabbers in the Rough for 10% off.
Even though the market's dead and you're not going to buy anything, try it out.
Oh, I think Alex is great with what he does because he's also one of those people. Like, one of my hardest thing with some of these companies is people want to push you to the website and only use their website, but I can be like, Alex, what's the deal with this? And he'd be like, well, what do you want? Do you want to buy it? You want to trade it? Like, let me know. And I can actually work with him as the person for some of these discs, which is kind of cool. And I miss that. I mean, that's kind of what got me really into the collecting market is just some of those connections and relationships that I built throughout the years. I mean, that's where this started, right? It's just us trading discs, getting to know each other. And now all of a sudden we're having a podcast.
It's
Is
true.
anyone listening? It's Tuesday. Where y'all at? I haven't seen Jerry's name on here once. Jerry?
I think
Jerry,
Jerry's like,
I forgot.
I think she's moving.
I think Josh only clicked one of the boxes for live.
Oh, that's probably what it is. Just Jerry's.
We only have Facebook user, and I don't know who that is.
But
No,
I
not
think we should
everyone.
like. I mean, I always like this is probably one of our more interesting topics that I continue to refer people back to. But the concept of how to get sponsorship and how do you get sponsors and sponsorship, I think we should start to talk a little bit about that.
It is
Yeah.
big sponsor season.
It
Because
is.
right
It
now
is
is
that
when
time.
people are doing a lot of stuff right now. Like I know that Infinite has opened theirs. I know like AGL. I saw. I feel like Lone Star's always taking people. Like they just never close.
Oh yeah, they're just like, oh hey, you want a sponsorship? Here you go.
You want
they're just
frisbees?
kinda-
We got you.
Wasn't it somebody
trying
got
to
their dog sponsored by Lone Star?
Yeah.
Now,
Oh,
is
yeah.
that true, or is that one of those fake internet stories? Just saying.
It feels true. It feels true.
Because is that dog? I think you had to have a PDGA number to be on the team. Unless that dog plays disc golf, then good for that dog. Good for that dog.
Good for
It's
that
like
dog.
Air Bud disc golf. Is
But
Chad
sponsorships,
Bolden
though.
in here? Is he in here? Is he
Yeah,
just-
yeah. He's one of
what's
the.
up?
Looks like he's one of the Facebook users.
I like how he
Chad?
just says his name. He doesn't say just Chad. Chad.
Well,
Bolden.
you called everyone out for not being here, and then
Then
You know,
people
we
are
got-
coming in.
Okay, that's true.
instant
I thought
classic.
but he could have said, "Hey, this is Chad Bolden. I'm here. I'm enjoying."
Chad doesn't have to announce himself. He just got
Right.
to. He's got to say his name, and he'll do the rest.
I'm gonna start doing that when I walk into a room. Cody Waldron.
He's
Nothing
the
else.
O of Josh.
walk in.
He's
Winter.
probably got
Cody
FD.
Waldron.
He's probably got second run FDs for more than $30. So
That is
That's
true.
all they're worth. That's all they're worth.
$35 because of the $5 of shipping. I'm being nice. I'm paying the shipping.
Ah!
But no, with
Why?
sponsorship,
Why?
so I think right now you got to identify like who you want to get sponsored and why you want to get sponsored by them. I think a lot of people are just kind of chasing, and I think that's why like Lone Star is kind of big. The Prodigy Ambassador team is kind of big as well for those same kind of gimmicks. Um, but starting to like take a step back and realize, what do you have to offer outside of your disc golf game? I know it's always easy to grasp, like, what is your social media presence? What does that start to look like? Um, Really, what are you trying to get out of these sponsorships? Because also realizing, like, depending on if you're 950 to 1,000 rated or 1,000 rated and above, you might get a little bit more than other people. Being able to have conversations with your friends around what their sponsorships actually entail is really important. So,
Mhm.
as a pro, I'm having conversations with other pros around like, oh, well, you're sponsored by such and such. What are they offering? Oh, hey, you have a bonus structure, you have an allotment, you have the ability to do A, B, and C. Like, you have an open bag, but with these limitations. Like, you start to have those conversations with better players and like players with sponsorships. And usually they're pretty forthright with it, unless, they signed a NDA, which not every company does, but you start to evaluate what it is exactly you want from that, um, and then you apply for our sponsorships based off of that. I recommend everybody, if you're just new to the sponsorship game, to look at an open bag sponsor. I don't think anyone should be pigeonholed to only throw Lone Star discs. Like, I don't
Well,
think you're
Lone
gonna
Star,
find
if
your
you're on
game.
their lower team, are you like? I feel like Lone
It's like
Star is probably one of the ones that
It's
let you
still
have.
90%. It's
it's
still
90%.
90%.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Dude,
Yeah.
Team Infinite. If I was going to sign in Infinite, let me throw
But
whatever I
Infinite
want.
is, and that's the other thing too, right? Like, Lone Star is willing to accept a lot of people, but Team Infinite isn't. Team Infinite keeps a relatively small application like, well, have a big application process, but they have a small acceptance process. So
Good. Keep the
realizing, like,
riffraff out.
they do, I think they do a really great job of that. um so what are you going to do to make yourself noticeable by these companies? Because you also got to realize, with Infinite, there's probably anywhere between 500 to 1,500, if not more, people applying for Infinite. So how do you stand out in a sea of 1,000 applications? You like to believe that they're going to read every single one, but that's just unrealistic of a company. So you got to find different ways to stand out. For some players, it's their rating. Infinite does value rating, and
Do they?
realizing that they do. Like, their whole, like, once you're over 1,000, you can get a, like, 1,000 rating, you get a tour series. They also value junior teams, so they also have sponsored junior players a little bit more frequently than ambassadors. So
Ooh.
you start to understand the company and some of their sponsorship, and these are just manufacturers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you're just looking for validity, going to a place like Max Wax, or some of these like little small, like, what is it, flight towels,
Mm-hmm.
that might give you your validity where you can keep
Nathan
your
Queen throws a flight towel team.
exactly.
Okay.
Nathan Queen
He's
does.
a
They're an
big
Oregon
boy.
based company. um
Are they?
yeah,
Yeah, they're in
I played
between.
with.
They're in between Paige and I, as
Yeah,
far as like geographically.
exactly.
Get me on
And
that team,
so
baby.
So, all of this to say is, identify who you're trying to get sponsored by and why. We all need towels, so trying to get flight towel sponsorship is low hanging fruit, but it gives you practice for applying. And then also, I think everybody has the best intentions. Like, I think I took on a little bit too many sponsors last year, so I'm cutting back intentionally this year, because I had the intention of like, oh, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do all of this stuff, but then life got in the way, and I couldn't meet my level of like content creation for the sponsors. And I started
Zach
kind of
said he's kicking
dwindling.
you off the team.
That's fine. I mean, if Zach wants to kick me off the team,
We're gonna
that's
kick you off Team
understandable.
Jammers too. Me and Josh have been talking.
I'm not on Team
We're gonna have to
Jammers,
cut you, dude. We're gonna have to cut you.
but I don't. And so, because I fall short of that, you should realize that sometimes it is a commitment. It's more than
Mm-hmm.
just a random story share, a random story, or random post. They want to see some like genuine, fresh content that's actually promoting them, and how that translates to some sales. Um, I think Birdie is one that I did a really good job with. Um, and when I signed TSA through the middle of the year, I started elevating TSA a little bit more, because they wanted to be the primary sponsorship on my jersey, which is fine. But because of that, Birdie started to wane, and I felt really guilty about that. And
I can see that.
I,
I can see
I
that.
was transparent with Derek and Kevin about some of that stuff and had that conversation. But you should be realizing what your package is, because and how it translates. And then also realizing, now all of a sudden, how good you're doing at disc golf and how your social media presence isn't necessarily enough. They're starting, like, some manufacturers want you to run tournaments, some manufacturers want you to run clinics, um, all of this other things that go into it. And so really evaluating what your package is unbiasedly, because everyone has a bias. I think there's a lot of people like, oh, I do so much for the community, and you're like, well, what do you do? Oh, well, I gave my buddy a disc.
Yeah, that's one of those big ones that people don't realize. It's not about, you buy a whole bunch of discs from the company, or you love them so much and you showed a buddy their company. It just takes so much more than that. They're looking for more than that, because you got to remember, especially as disc golf grows, there's going to be so many people going after those spots. And so, what do you have, and what can you give to the disc golf community and enhance this company that's the other person next to you applying won't do? Not because they won't, just currently they're not.
And also make the assumption, if this company gives you nothing, is this somebody that you still want to represent? Um, because sometimes the companies have the best intentions and then they can't deliver because they also have these bigger, you know, more dominant players on the circuit that is demanding more from them. And so sometimes they're like, I want to help out these ambassador side of it, or these maybe lower tiers, and we want to do all of these things. But oh, hey, now my commitment to these bigger players are a lot more. So as a sponsored player, would you be willing to rep them? Um, and all of my sponsors, I would gladly continue to support, even if they gave me nothing, because I do believe in them. Um, and especially like as I start to throw more of their plastic, I am more and more committed to them and how it translates to my game. So I think being able to stop and evaluate for yourself, if you would, is good. Because I've also seen a lot of players who take in sponsorships and then halfway through the year, not even halfway, like sometimes like 3 months into the year, they're like, "Oh yeah, this isn't for me. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? I want more. I want more. I want more." Um, then all of a sudden you're doing it for the freebies and incentives, and not necessarily because you believe in the company. And if I was a company, I wouldn't really want to invest in that person as much, because clearly they're you wanting this one way kind of like relationship, and just evaluating that. And I don't know if everybody is able to have these conversations with themselves. So reaching out to a buddy and having those conversations is huge. When I left a few like sponsors last year, or when I'm leaving them this year, for 2024, so they won't be on my jersey, I had intentional conversations with my buddies like, oh hey, I don't think I'd stick with this sponsor anymore, and this is why. And it's not because I don't like their product, it's because I can't meet X, Y, and Z, and so I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
remove myself from this equation. And that's, I mean, that's my initial advice. I know it's kind of long winded.
No, that was good. That was solid. It hit on the major points. It hit on the major points. I think it was really good advice.
Yeah. And I will give a shout out to my buddy Henry, down south. He's kind of weed California, kind of cut off from a lot of the world. Um,
California is cut off from the world.
weed California is it's Northern
What the heck
California.
is weed California?
Exactly. It's cut off from the world. It's south of Redding. It's north of Shasta. It's
Mm-hmm.
a
I don't know what
college
any of that
town.
means. No.
Exactly. See, cut off from the world.
Does he have a Facebook?
He does have a Facebook
If
and
he's
an
not cut off,
Instagram.
he's cool.
But anyways, so shout out to Henry, because Colin and myself on our way to Goat Hill ran into this guy and we started talking to him. Henry is an emerging like player that wants to, grow in the sport and get better, just like a lot of us. And if you're listening to this, probably it counts to you. Um,
What's his last
but
name?
what
Henry what?
Barnum?
You actually had a Henry that said "Go Page."
Yeah.
Let's go
And
Page
so
Hurtado. That's Henry.
and so so Henry, anyways, let me get this out. He met us. Um, and he wanted to get sponsored like a lot of players want to get sponsored, but he spent this year truly not hunting sponsorships but building his social media platform. He reached out to us. He saw that Colin and me were sponsored by Berg's Bags. He got himself a Berg Bags. He started following him. He started sharing all of Berg's stuff. He's, sharing all of like these other players to get himself noticed and get his social media kind of up in his following. He's creating plans to help Northern like California golf grow a little bit more away from itself, and he's wanting to utilize some of these sponsors. So he just got picked up by T-Box Socks. Like, so he just got the sock sponsorship, and he sent me his little write up for some of his questions, which it was extremely thought out. It was thorough. It was, with the sponsorship, this is how I'm looking at growing, and it was all outside of just him playing disc golf. It was about him trying to grow this exposure in Northern California, which, as a sponsor, you're going to want to see and support. But he spent a whole year crafting this, and we had conversations around some of that stuff outside of just disc golf. Of course, I helped him with like, oh, here's your form, here's all of this stuff. Those conversations happened, but he's really trying to figure out how to position himself outside of a player to be of value to these sponsorships. And this offseason, I know he's pursuing a few of them. He's already received a couple in big ways because of that paid off. So sometimes getting away from that I want it now mentality, and can I spend this next year to create a platform to maybe get sponsored outside of Facebook groups, outside of Instagram, um, outside of just your disc golf game. Also include all of those things, obviously, but what else can you do to build yourself? Um, and that's the biggest thing that you can do to up your sponsorship stakes.
Yes.
Love it. Yes.
What do you want me to say?
Look at this.
That was very succinct and well thought out. I'm not gonna.
Henry knows people. Henry, he knows
Good
people.
old Weed, California. I don't know what that means. Nobody knows what that means.
It's actually a cool little town. It's a cool little town you gotta pass
weed?
through.
Or the town is called Weed.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah. Both.
That's like we got an intercourse, Pennsylvania. So I mean,
exactly. So Weed, California is an intercourse.
PA on the West Coast.
It's the
Cool, man.
Intercourse of West Coast.
But,
I like it.
I need to find if I can get that on a disc, like intercourse disc golf. Just slap it on a disc.
So, yeah. I mean,
Well, we're wrapping that part up. It's like it's getting pretty close top of the hour. What do you think?
I mean, you guys can contribute. Fuck, man.
You keep
I'm
talking. All you do is talk.
Here's
you
the
guys
issue,
contribute. It's like I'm just talking to my fucking to myself out here.
That's
because
why you have
because
to
you are.
You're both sponsored players. What have been your experience?
Nobody
with
sponsors me. Nobody.
So as you went on this long tangent of yours, Paige, you hit on all the major points because this is a conversation that we have yearly around this time. We talk about this, then we experience more things. And so you did a really good job at recapping it because we do go over it once a year near the end of the year. And there's not really much past, like, don't go for it. Don't go with the team that's go with the right community because you're going to be with that community for at least a year. Go with the right community.
And that community
you're going to be
might
interacting
be
with them. You're going to
pages that you frequent. It might be people on your team that just don't do nice things to you.
It doesn't matter about all those details. What it matters is that you find one that's a good vibe for you. Like I got on with TSA because it's a good vibe. I love them.
Great vibe. Great.
They are.
But also, like, evaluate your game. If you're getting some of these like one disc manufacturers or full bag manufacturers, is your game good enough to switch out 90% of your bag and you still be good enough to continue to play? I've seen a buddy that 975 rated at the time switch over to a new full bag sponsorship and his game just kind of plummeted, and then he picked it back up based off.
Didn't Arturo talk about that last time? Because didn't Arturo kind of go through that, like the growing pains of anytime you switch? Because I'm sure, like even when we were talking about the time lapse, there are enough molds that would fit that, but it's probably if I had to transition my whole bag to one sponsorship, it would probably be very difficult.
I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it.
You could do it, but every time, like even when I went to coaches meetings when I was coaching volleyball, they always talked about when you learn a new skill, there's going to be a drop in performance. That is for everything. So even if I'm teaching you a 4-step approach instead of a 3-step approach, before there's going to be any sort of gain of performance, there's always going to be that dip. It's the learning part of it. So just like that guy we had, or the friend you were talking to that had that dip, I wonder if his score has gone above that 970 because he improved since then. I know he had that dip, but did he get better in the long run? I'm sure you could do that too, Paige.
Yeah, and I mean, the same thing with me, right? Like when I first signed up with TSA, I didn't think I could, I committed to the 5 molds for a long period of time. And now if you look at my
Mhm.
bag, it's primarily TSA because the plastic consistency and some of the flight that comes from some of those plastics, it's too hard to like, let me go to a CD2 and then throw a construct. There could be subtle differences in release. And so I dialed my release point in for TSA, and then all of a sudden I'm throwing more TSA's plastic because of that. And that's always going to happen with some of that learning curve. But I can't say it hasn't been a frustrating part of my thing, right? Like I'm in the biggest slump of my career right now, and it's frustrating beyond belief. I'm also playing weirdly some of the best golf I've ever played in the same stretch. So it's like I'm trying to trust the process. Even though it's been a 6 month process, it's been fucking frustrating. Um, and you got to hope to see the other side. But I'm very
But
disciplined, and I know to trust the process because I've been an athlete my entire life, and I've seen this before. I've seen slumps, and I've worked through slumps, and I've experienced them. But if you haven't, you're going to want to quit disc golf. I can promise you, you're going to want to quit disc golf
I'm
if you
sure
get.
people have. I'm
Yeah,
sure, and that's for any sport. Like I see it all the time as a PE teacher. I see it all the time where kids try a new skill and get so frustrated that they cannot do it. Especially the athletes that go from one sport they're really good at to one that they're not. That is the most frustrating. Where you have like little Billy who is picking boogers and picking his butt. He doesn't care. He
yeah.
can't do anything, but he's having the blast of
Fuck
his
you,
life.
Billy.
Mhm.
That's how you
Whoa.
get pink eye.
Whoa. Whoa.
Damn it, Billy.
Ballet. But yeah,
Billy.
that's true though, because you're gonna have that's mature that you can see the other side of it, where you can know that yes, it's the process. It's not the well, I can't do it, let me just give up. And that like even playing with my 10-year-old son, that's a big thing for him. Like because he gets frustrated. Hey, dad, it's not going in. Like, buddy, all you have to do is you're gonna have to, it's gonna be tough to try and do this. We were talking about flex shots. He's like, well, dad, if I throw a disc this way, it's gonna go that way. Like, no, there is a process to this where you're gonna learn to pick something overstable. It will fight that way and fight back. Like we just talked about it today. It is tricky, and I think that comes with being mature enough to see that you will struggle first. Yes, rub your chin there, Paige. I think I'm the oldest one here, aren't I? Or
I just like
close
that you're
to it.
calling me mature.
I know. For once in your
Which of
life,
my George Clooney years? No.
these are your George Clooney years. My
Oh yeah, I'm just
goodness.
gonna live till I'm like 60 and then just die. So like this is my like midlife towards the tail end of my life, and then
Yeah,
I mean, I tell my wife all the time, if I make it to 50,
that's that.
that's good.
I mean,
I
yeah,
got 13 years left, and I'm done.
I'm with that. I'm with that. Who needs retirement when you can just be dead?
Spitting facts over here. This is straight. That's a
Such a
fact.
such a positive podcast tonight.
All right, guys, let's
Oh.
transition to closing thoughts. We'll start it with Josh.
Um, I'll start by saying, if you try out to get sponsored, you find a company that you feel like you'd fit in with, and you like the community, you like the discs. You gotta at least like the discs. If you
Not
don't get
always.
picked this year, don't give up. Just be like, try to reach out to who you were talking with the application process, and see if they can give you some pointers of why you didn't get picked. Some people will tell you, and then spend the next year working on those things if you really want to get sponsored. Don't give up on it, even if you don't make it. Also, anyone that listens to this podcast who got a Discmania mystery box and they get one of the new Neo Tactics, hit me up. Thank you.
I will
Also,
pay. I will
just to
pay to
contribute
have
to
them send that to you.
just to contribute to what Josh was saying, if you can't handle rejection, don't apply for sponsorships. I was
Mhm.
rejected quite a bit before, I continued to build that platform for myself until where I wasn't rejected. If you can't handle rejection and your initial response is to try to, reach out and just talk a bunch of shit to all of the players, um,
I
because
like
you're
to join
emotionally
Discord.
dysregulated, don't apply. Learn to handle rejection. That's what's going to
No,
make you better.
I like to
When
be as
you,
petty as possible.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm petty page for a reason. I'm here for the pettiness, but if you can't handle rejection and you blast people and then you want to get sponsored by them a year later, you're not going to get sponsored, and you're going to set yourself up for failure. So prepare for rejection, take it in stride, and then move on and improve yourself. Cody, what are your
Whoa.
closing thoughts?
I mean, yeah, don't burn those bridges because I mean, we saw that even after some of the sponsorships I saw, like people as soon as they didn't make the team, they're like on like oh man, F this team. I don't need them anyways. Like I didn't want to be on there. Like let's not be like that.
I got
Um
in though. Why are you sponsored by him? I applied for him. Okay, cool. I'm better than you. That's why.
that's very all right. I take back the mature comments. Never mind. Take the glasses off. You've
No,
lost them.
I'm a lot nicer than that, but also like
Are you? Are you?
I'm the nicest
Are
guy I know.
you?
Also
Mm,
the humblest.
Most
mm,
humble pie. That's my
mm.
guy.
Come on, Cody. Closing thoughts.
I would say if, like you were saying earlier, a sponsorship should be a symbiotic relationship where it benefits you both. If you go into it just expecting the company to give, it is not going to be a good fit. If you just expect that company to give you free discs, to give you free stuff, and not expect something in return, that would not be a very good business plan for them. On the same end, if you go in there and you're giving everything, you're giving all your time, you're giving up all of your social media, like, hey, everything I do, Berg bag. Like, I'm just using them as an example because we talked about them. If all you're doing is talking about them and they're doing nothing for you, then it probably doesn't benefit you either. Um, so I would say don't just get a sponsorship just to say like, oh, I'm a sponsored player. It really, if you're not going to put in the work, if you don't think it is going to be beneficial to you or them, like I don't do it. It's going to be more work than you think just to say I'm a sponsored player. You can't just be like, yeah, I'm a sponsored player and go play one tournament every year. Like you're going to have to either make sure your social media is on point, make sure your PDGA numbers on point. There's going to be a lot more to it than you think.
Because also, like I will say, the clout you get from being able to say, "Oh, I'm a sponsored player," but then you don't do anything. Everyone's going to see right through that, and all that clout that
Mhm.
you might get from that ability to say that is going to be washed away because you're like, "Oh, do you really do anything for this company?" Because that's also how people are evaluating some of these things. Um, I will say this: Jammers in the Rough team of 2023, we did a lot of great things, um, and we're looking at extending the team for 2024. I will say you will get bonus points if you can name this disc. It's a second run FD, yellow, obviously, with the life stamp. If you will have a question in there, if you
Wait. You
mention,
just said this disc. You just said what it is.
oh, I'm
I
gonna say
know.
what it is. I want
Yeah.
Oh,
them.
you're saying it's going
This
to be
is like you listen to our
follow us.
podcast. Now you mentioned this yellow life second run FD in our application process. You will get bonus points because
And
that's going to show us
if you send
that you
Josh
are
Winters
listening
a picture of your feet,
of
if
your
you send
tingling.
Josh Winters, somebody did that on the lounge like a year ago. They're like, hey, send me pictures of your feet. I'll send you a disc. So I started having people send me pictures of their feet, and I thought, you freaking turds. But hey, it worked. It
So
worked.
keep that in mind as we open up our application process in 2024. We're looking at better ways to do some, apparel and jerseys. That's one of our goals. I'm working with a company behind the scenes to get that going. So we are trying to look at expanding our team, not necessarily bigger, but more intentional with how we're doing some things. So my closing thoughts is this
You already
entire
had
podcast.
yours.
This is my entire podcast. Just listen to what I have to say, and you'll
Oh
be
my
a lot better
gosh.
of an individual. So, with that, let's transition to this week's
If I
sponsor,
hear you say transition
Rare
one more time,
Air
I'm going to lose my
Discs.
mind.
What's
Transition,
up
transition,
with Rare
transition.
Air Discs? Find out on this week's podcast. Use code Jammers in the Rough for 10% off at rareairdiscs.com. So, with that, guys, thank you for tuning in. Keep jamming it in the rough. We out.